What's up? Good morning, PT on Ice Daily Show. Dr. Jeff Moore here, currently serving as the CEO of ICE and lead faculty for cervical and lumbar spine divisions. Thrilled to be here on a Monday morning. Hope everybody's doing awesome. Oftentimes having a Q&A, but today I want to dive into a leadership topic because I've been cooking this one up for a while and really want to share it with you all. So hope everybody is well. Hope the week's off to a good start. Upcoming courses, got a bunch of great online courses starting up. So if you want to jump into one of our 8-week online courses, today is CMFA pregnancy and postpartum. So if you want to work with pregnant gals and postpartum gals in their journey and return to fitness, would love for you all to jump into that course with Christina and Kelsey. And then following that, this week, Wednesday, Modern Management of the Older Adult Advanced Concepts course fires up. And then in the next 2 weeks, we've got Telehealth, Building Your Digital Practice with Rob Vining is May 25th, and Primary Care PT with Morgan and Eric is going to be June 7th. So whole bunch of good online courses that we've got cooked up for you. So good morning. Good to see everybody filing in. Today, I want to talk about decision making. It's an interesting topic because being decisive is so important in all things leadership, productivity, success, etc. But the timing of the decision is not talked about enough. And I want to unpack that a bit this morning. So I think we can all agree that good decision making requires a sufficient amount or an abundance of good information, right? So good decision making requires an abundance, right, a reasonable quantity of accurate information, right? We always say in our physical exams and our live courses, you can't make good decisions with bad data. Right. And so you have to collect high quality information in sufficient amounts. Now, I would argue that in business, people tend to have a tendency to want to make decisions too early. And the reason for that is that it feels good, right? It feels good to quote unquote put something to bed, if you will, right? That feels good. Why is that so satisfying? And why does that tend to be the bias? I would argue it's two main things. Number one, we are productivity focused probably to a fault, right? It feels good to check the box, right? To feel as though you've made that call, you can move on to the next thing. The problem with that mindset is that it's productivity oriented versus accuracy oriented. It's productivity versus accuracy. Right? It's a huge part of the issue. The second reason that we tend to feel that it's satisfying to check the box, right, is that anxiety builds as the decision deadline looms. And a lot of people don't like that energy, right? So you'll hear commonly, oh, good, I don't have to worry about that anymore, right? I don't have to worry about that anymore. Well, my counter to that is you shouldn't have been worrying in the first place. Right, is really when we unpack this, what I want you to appreciate. But because you were worrying, it felt good to make that decision early, perhaps prematurely early, because you wanted to get it off your plate. You wanted to get it off your mind, okay? So those are some reasons that I think over and over again, we see leaders and people in general in business making decisions prematurely. Now, with that bias towards a desire to make decisions too early, right? I want to have you imagine a timeline, right? On one end of the timeline, you've got the moment where you're aware that a decision is going to need to be made, right? You're aware of the issue, you're aware of the plan, etc. You're aware that you're going to have to make a decision. It is now, quote unquote, weighing on your mind, right? On the far other side of this timeline is when you absolutely must make the decision. Now, appreciate that both sides of that do exist, right? Because if you push it too far, if you don't make the decision in time, there is an issue with that because you will not have, right, adequate gap to execute the mission. Like, that's important too. You can't go beyond the timeline, right? But picture this timeline for me. Aware you've got to make the decision, absolutely need to make the decision now in order to allow for proper production, proper execution, etc. Okay, as you travel in time along that line, a couple really important things happen. Number one, you gain a ton of information that, going back to our need for accurate and abundant information, is important, right? You gain a ton of information about the people that are involved, right? About pricing of different things needed for the task, about feasibility of execution, alliances are going to form. A lot of information is going to come to you as you travel along that timeline, right? Information, accurate, is good. The real rub, though, is that the closer that you get to the absolute need or deadline of making that decision, the more rich and accurate the information becomes. I think we can all appreciate that because now we're closer to D-Day, right? What we really mean by that is that not only is the information getting better, but the opposite side of that is that you're decreasing the gap time for unexpected things to occur between your decision and the execution of it. If you make that decision early on the timeline, before you travel along it, not only do you miss out on all of that incredible, increasingly rich information, increasingly accurate information that should be informing your decision, the earlier you make it, the bigger the gap in time between the decision and the actual execution, which means that unknown, unexpected, and troubling, disturbing variables can present themselves, which make your decision inaccurate and needing of revision. So the longer you're able to wait through that timeline, the more information you get, the more accurate it is, and the more you are decreasing the gap time where unexpected variables can throw your decision from accurate to inaccurate. The problem is the waiting, isn't it? Right? Because now we kind of go back to the top. As you wait, anxiety builds, right? The fundamental problem here is that we don't trust ourselves enough. The anxious act the earliest. No doubt there. The anxious act the earliest, and that is why they struggle to lead efficiently. Come on, think about Braveheart's army, right? We've all seen the show, right? Hope not date myself too bad, but come on, you all know the scene, right? The army was, the horses were charging down on the Scots, right? And they had sharpened the spears on the ground, and they were going to stand those spears up right as the horses engaged them. Remember the anxiety you felt in that movie theater, right? As Mel Gibson's yelling, hold, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're going to be too late, right? They got to stand those spears up. But understand that every second they waited, the information they got on where the horse was going to be, right? The amount of gap they decreased for the horse to move, right? For the horse to realize, oh, there's a spear in front of me. Every second they were willing to fight their anxiety and hold increased the accuracy and the efficacy of the ultimate decision. They waited all the way along the timeline and the anxiety built, but so did the accuracy of the information and ultimately the victory that was based upon it. This is why a calm mind is the ultimate weapon to anybody who possesses it in business. This is why the person who can allow data to unfold, who can take the pressure from their team, take the pressure from themselves of wanting to put it to bed, right? And stay in that discomfort, not only be willing to stay there, but be willing to exist there with clarity and curiosity about what the next piece of information is. How long can I wait? It's well known in negotiations that you never make the first offer, right? The person who shows their cards first, right? The person who begins to falter, begins to give away the variables and the richness to the opponent. This has been known forever. All of this boils down to these essential principles of why staying the course along that timeline allows victory in most scenarios. Okay, but there's more to this, and I won't go too far, but if you pull the trigger early, right? This all kind of builds up to this fundamental belief that the longer you wait to pull the trigger, the more accurate your shot. I don't care what you're doing. The longer you wait to pull that trigger, the more information you get, the less gap time for unexpected changes. The longer you wait to pull the trigger, the more accurate your shot's going to be. Which means the less often you're going to have to revisit decisions. And this is where the efficiency really starts to show up. If you have to revisit things all the time that you thought were quote unquote put to bed, okay, number one, this is a disaster from simply a productivity standpoint. The thing that you thought you were doing to enhance productivity actually winds up coming back and biting you, and every time you revisit, your productivity tanks. Had you just waited and gotten all the information, withstood the anxiety, or never had it in the first place, you wouldn't be making all of these false starts and having to go back and revisit. Another important component to that, beyond just productivity, is the people you work with begin to lose trust. If you become that person, right, who every time they make a decision, you know it's going to change, you know, oh, don't worry too much about that. That person's probably going to change their mind. Okay, that's a big issue, because it's really hard to ramp up execution and action when people don't believe the final call's been made. But if you're always trying to decide early for the reasons mentioned above and always having to revisit, oh shoot, you guys, I didn't realize that this was going to happen. We've got to revisit this. You can feel it in your team of like, oh man, all right. I mean, we'll do it, but gosh, I thought we had put that to bed. Understand that's where the actual pain lives. It's not in holding the line. It's in jumping the gun, in losing the productivity, in having to revisit, in losing the trust. This is where the actual problem lies. Team, there are a million real world examples of this. I'll give you one and then I'll let you go. But podcasting, right? Those who've studied the art of it know that generally speaking, it's better to wait until you've heard your guest's entire question or thought before you contribute. Now, not only before you actually say something, but before you think about what you're going to say. But what do most podcasters do? Myself included, guilty all the time. You try to think of what you're going to say next early because you don't want that uncomfortable gap. In other words, you don't trust yourself that if you let them finish, you're going to come up with something awesome right in the moment of truth. Instead, you play the safe shot, right? And you try to think of what your next thought's going to be while they're talking. Number one, you're not listening. Number two, you're not getting the final piece of their thought, which should, in a natural, deep, real conversation, be what stymies your response. That's the problem. Right? Stimulating your response should be coming from the information they give you, particularly towards the end of their thought. But if you jump the gun because you're uncomfortable, you're going to be giving a thought on their thought that wasn't finished. All of life plays out like this. And the more you can begin to appreciate that the richness and accurate data stands in the moment of greatest anxiety, and your willingness to prepare your mind to be in those spaces, your willingness to set that precedent, the more accurate of a leader you will be, the more productive of a leader and a person you will be. Think about this. Give this some thought and how it plays out in your decision making. I would love to have more dialogue, but I know I'm pushing my luck time-wise. Team, have a great Monday. I'm not sure if I'll see you this Thursday or next Thursday, but everybody go out there and have a killer day. We'll see you every morning, as always, 8:30 a.m. Eastern. Team, courses, ptonice.com. Thanks so much, everybody. Get out of here.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.